Welcome to this week's edition of the Week in Triathlon. Let's roll that intro and get stuck into this week's news. The first big bit of news for the week, this coming weekend, is obviously Kona, but more on that in just a little bit. As regards Ireland, the sport of triathlon in Ireland seems to have become a full contact sport. Take a look at this photo. An athlete was taken out by a buck, but it somehow reminds me of that Buck Norris mountain biking incident in South Africa a couple of years ago.
Whoa! Holy cow!
One theory is that this incident in Ireland would not have taken place had the cyclists been observing the anti-drafting distance rule. However, the good news is that the athlete in question here was completely uninjured and was able to complete the triathlon completely under their own power. ITU, take note of that. Now onto the world of Ironman. Before we get into the world of Ironman, you'll notice that this week's edition of the Week in Triathlon is slightly different in that there's going to be no race reports included in the Week in Triathlon because those are handled separately in my How the Race Was Won series. Week in Triathlon, we're going to be looking specifically at news items only. Now we move on to the world of Ironman. And the first piece of news as far as the world in Ironman is concerned, before we get onto Kona, is that the Ironman 70.3 World Championship for 2018 has been awarded to the Nelson Mandela Bay in South Africa. The event is due to be taking place on the 9th and 10th of September 2018. And athletes qualifying to race in Nelson Mandela Bay in beginning of September 2018, will do well to remember that September is early springtime in South Africa, so expect extra crispy early morning conditions. Relatively nearby to the Nelson Mandela Bay area is the Tiffendale Ski Resort, and the Tiffendale Ski Resort is still operational through the most of September, so that should give you some indication of the type of temperatures to expect. Now obviously this weekend the Ironman world is all about the Ironman World Championship in Kona. My Coach Edu prediction is that Daniela Ray will once again dominate the women's race. The men's race, however, will be much more interesting. Remember that defending champion Jan Frodeno smashed the world record in rough during the course of July, and that will obviously have taken a lot out of his body. He's been relatively quiet on the triathlon front since, so we'll have to wait and see whether or not he's managed to shed the fatigue properly from that effort that he put in rough and been able to make his proper build-up to Kona. Obviously, any weakness that Frodeno shows on the bike course will be absolutely punished by Uber biker Sebastian Kienle. Now onto the world of the Challenge family. Challenge Herning in Denmark will be the European Middle Distance Championship for 2017, and that's been pegged for the 10th of June 2017. And I had a quick look as far as the climate conditions in Herning. And Herning during the course of the month of June has an average morning temperature of only 9 degrees. And as far as the general average for June is concerned, is that there are on average 17 days of rainfall during the month of June each and every single year. So the chances are that the conditions are going to be cold and the conditions are going to be wet. So which means that it could potentially lead to a cancellation of the swim, but we'll obviously have to wait and see how things pan out there. Now moving on to the world of XTERRA, and just 3 weeks away we'll be having the having XTERRA Maui, the XTERRA World Championship, and the list of 72 pro athletes has now become available. The women's race is likely to be an epic battle between ITU World Champion Flora Duffy and the Scottish rocket Leslie Patterson. The men's race, however, will be in a number of really interesting scenarios. Defending champion and strong runner Josiah Middle will have to put together a superb race to be able to control Ruben Ruzafa, who raced with a chest infection and just off a bout of antibiotics last year, and as a result he had his worst ever performance in Maui. That was third place. Ironically, last year with his chest infection was Ruben Ruzafa's first ever visit to Maui where he did not finish as world champion. Then add to the mix, you've got the young Mexican Mauricio Mendez, who just won an Ironman 70.3 as a way of testing his form. Then in addition to that, you've got relative outsiders, and it's interesting to be able to call this athlete specifically a relative outsider, but we are talking XTERRA, and that will be Sebastian Kienle, who will be chasing the Hawaii double after challenging for the win in Kona. And then there's Mickey Weiss. What can I say about Mickey? Mickey won in Maui in 2011, and his victory in 2011 was literally days before his doping ban instituted by WADA came into effect. He already had the doping ban hanging over his head from a preceding incident, and literally I think it was 10 days after Maui in 2011, WADA announced that the doping ban was in place, and that was when the guillotine fell. So that meant that Mickey's victory in Maui still stayed in place, still stayed in the record books. But bearing in mind that this is Maui, where athletes are often given rehydration intravenously post-finish in the medical tent because of the heat and humidity that is racing in Maui. In addition to that, as far as racing in Maui is concerned, racing in XTERRA is concerned, this is XTERRA, where athletes trust each other, so therefore no real testing is needed. Finally, we move on to the ITU. And looking back over the past couple of weeks, who was the genius at the ITU that decided to put the ITU Long Distance Duathlon World Championship on the same day as the Ironman 70.3 World Championship? What the hell were you thinking? It's a sure way to ensure that you get zero of the top professional athletes or age groupers at your event. You get zero media and social media coverage for your sponsors. Surefire way of making sure that your sponsors come back to you next year. Well done there, ITU. Then there is the matter of the Brownlees in Cozumel. It was dramatic, and it made for brilliant viral media coverage for the ITU. However, there are a couple of matters that I do need to address about the Brownlees and that whole drama that played itself out in Cozumel. Firstly, through the process, Henry Schumann, the South African athlete that picked up the bronze medal at the Olympic Games in Rio, got absolutely vilified for the win for daring to overtake Jonny Brownlee while he was being helped to the line by Alistair. But, and this is a very important but, to all of those of you that have been vilifying Henry Schumann for taking the win, back off a bit, seriously. The rules, the ITU's own rules, state that in Olympic distance racing, an athlete must complete the course by their own effort alone. So ask yourself the following question: could Jonny have made it to the finish line without Alistair's help? If the answer, in all honesty, is that no, Jonny wouldn't have made it to the finish line without Alistair's help, then a disqualification is the only option available to the race referee. However, because we're dealing with the Brownlees, because we're dealing with the amount of social currency that they carry, the amount of presence they bring to the sport, the race referee chose not to disqualify Jonny, and you have this epic viral video of the one brother helping the other across the finish line. But aside from what was happening at the front of the race, the fact that Jonny was kept on the official result sheets means that if you look down the results and you get down to the athlete that finished 15th, that athlete that finished 15th now gets to go home without having received a paycheck for his efforts for the day. Bearing in mind the Brownlees make a lot of money from product endorsements and such like, so they didn't really need the paycheck that desperately in Cozumel to be able to make ends meet. But down the line in 15th place, you've got an athlete that now missed out on the littlest paycheck of the day. And that littlest paycheck of the day would have been enough for that athlete to recover his entry fee and a portion of his travel expenses to get to Cozumel. So that is the unintentional and unexpected spin-off from what happened in Cozumel, is you've got an athlete that's trying to make ends meet, that's trying to break into top-level elite racing, needing to go home without a paycheck and needing to work out a way to make ends meet to be able to get to the start line of ITU racing next season. That brings me to the end of this week's edition of the Week in Triathlon. Give me a thumbs up if you like this new type of format without the race reports and just focusing on news. Also remember to like and share this video, post any comments, questions, criticisms that you may have in the comment section down below. If you're new to my channel, hit that subscribe button, and last but by no means least, remember, stay carved up for the win. I'll see you next time. Cheers.
Whoa! Oh.
CoachEdu.net